So the Minnesota Timberwolves are currently sitting at 11-11, and this season is not going the way that they had hoped, right? I mean, they just aren't a very good team. They don't mesh well. They don't have the right complement and pieces around Karl Anthony Towns and Rudy Gobert. On top of that, you basically just neutralize Karl Anthony Towns. Yes, he's a great three-point shooter for a big man, but what made him great was playing center, right? Playing the center position. Not just that, but something that I've brought up before. He doesn't have the IQ that, say an Anthony Davis and like a Miles Turner might have, right? Like maybe that pairing could work, or even an Anthony Davis and Rudy Gobert could play together. Like Karl Anthony Towns, as great of a talent as he is, there's a certain level that you need to have and a certain understanding that you just can't seem to get through with these guys. And it's also probably a mixture of coaches, probably a mixture of just talent around them, the type of players that they have. They don't really have like that mid-range operational type guy that could kind of penetrate, right? Like Ant-Man, incredible. Anthony Edwards is great. D'Angelo Russell, he's a great scorer, doesn't really provide much defense, but they don't really have any perimeter defense. It's kind of a lot of just that, right? There's several pieces to this dysfunctional puzzle that are all kind of just different causes, and it's just time to make a change. Karl Anthony Towns is hurt, and it's like, okay, now what? This team, you end up losing, you lose enough games, all of a sudden, you end up landing the Utah Jazz, Victor Wembanyama or something like that. It's a total disaster. I mean, that's probably the worst thing that could happen. You go and basically just mortgage everything to go all in. You don't even make the playoffs, and you were better last year than you are this year. And it's just because Rudy just wasn't the answer. For whatever reason, the Timberwolves scoured the league and said, man, you know what the missing piece is? Rudy. Let's go get Gobert. Let's go take him and turn us into a contender. Rudy Gobert and Karl Anthony Towns together. We're going to have the Twin Towers. We're going to bring that. And in a league that is just the opposite. And look, I have a video on this channel from when this trade happened. And I was like, it's not going to work. I don't believe in the Minnesota Timberwolves. I said that this was going to happen because Rudy Gobert, it's only going to get worse even if they make the playoffs because teams already know how to neutralize him. He can't guard the perimeter. Karl Anthony Towns can't guard the perimeter. You don't have any perimeter, defenders and just really reliable shooting. Like it's very clunky. And if you watch their games, like a lot of their games, they're trying to run these sets, and it's just like everyone's running into each other, and there's no spacing, and everyone's just kind of like on top of each other, and it's just because you don't have the talent. And top of that, you completely neutralize what your best player is good at. And Anthony Edwards, right? You put this big tree in the middle so he can't be as effective himself as he once was. And so the big question is now what do you do? Because you're not going to be able to trade Rudy Gobert, right? Maybe a team would take him and maybe you could basically just kind of fleece yourself, but that would be an absolute disaster. I don't even think they could do that even if they wanted to. Even if they could just give Rudy Gobert away and a team would take him, I don't think they could do that just because of like just the chaos that would ensue if that was the case. But how do you get out of this? Maybe you trade D'Angelo Russell and see maybe you could get something for him, but he's an expiring contract. How many teams are going to give up real value and assets for D'Angelo Russell? How many teams are looking at D'Lo and going, man, he's our missing piece? Like D'Lo is a solid player. Like I'd have no problems with D'Angelo Russell, right? I don't think he's a guy that is changing the fates of any teams. Like he's probably your third best player on a championship team. He's not your first or second. He's a guy that, if he can score and he can give you consistency, which at times he lacks, even on the Timberwolves he lacks. And at times he's the second, third option, right? And it's just, it's becoming a problem that I just don't see fixed. And so maybe if you could start recouping some assets, get D'Lo off, maybe some team would take him. Do you trade Karl Anthony Towns? Do you start looking in that direction? Seriously, you take Ant-Man. He's your star. He's your best player. He's the guy you're building around for the future. You got him and you got Rudy Gobert. Yeah, Rudy kind of neutralizes Ant-Man, but hopefully he can kind of improve and adjust to that, especially if you don't have two bigs. So maybe you could take Karl Anthony Towns and go get some pieces that maybe fit better around Ant-Man and Rudy Gobert. I think you could get a really nice return for Karl Anthony Towns. I think there's teams out there that would go and take him, even with all his flaws and just everything with the way he plays the game and stuff like that. I still believe that teams would make an effort to go and give up some real value for him. And then maybe you could go and kind of maybe get several pieces and maybe get a nice little haul that you could put around Ant-Man and and Rudy Gobert. Then maybe if you can move off of D'Angelo Russell, then you could, have that. You still got guys like Daniels. It's a really tough spot that Minnesota put themselves in. And I mean, they did it to themselves. I mean, when the Rudy Gobert trade happened to begin with, everyone was like, what? Everyone was like, you really did that? And the amount that they gave up is the other questionable. They basically mortgaged their entire future to go get Rudy Gobert. They probably could have gotten Rudy for half the price. I mean, Utah wanted to unload Rudy. That was the big thing. Do we trade, Rudy? Do we trade, Mitchell? Do we trade both? You probably would have had, if you would have given half of what you gave up, you probably still would have had the best offer. Because it's not like teams were running to the door to go get Rudy. It wasn't. And you just don't have enough pieces that make sense around the core of your team. You do have some nice pieces. They do have some pieces that I think you could kind of, with the right tweaking, the right maneuvering, maybe you could make this team structured better. But outside of Karl Anthony Towns, who else are you? Because you're not trading Anthony Edwards. That's not happening. So D'Angelo Russell, you're probably not getting much of a return for. Maybe you could get something, but it's very likely going to be a long-term salary play, right? So that doesn't really make a lot of sense. Rudy, what are you going to get for Rudy? What team is going to end up giving you assets and trade value? Or even if you're not trying to get what you gave up, even if you're just trying to get, pennies on the dollar, you're not going to get any value. I mean, how many teams want Rudy Gobert? There were a couple teams that were interested in him, but after seeing this experiment, there might be some of those teams might go, I don't know anymore. I don't know about that anymore. And so you're very limited. You're cap strapped. The Minnesota Timberwolves went from a promising young up and coming team to a team that is going to be stuck for the next 3-4 years at least, unless they make some major splash or make some major change, and trade Karl Anthony Towns, get some valuable assets, build around Anthony Edwards. You basically just ensured that you're a play-in team for the next 3 years. Unless something happens. Maybe there's some miracle turnaround. I just don't see it. I don't look at this team and go, man, if they just, did this, and this, boom, there's a team that could figure it out. Or I don't look at this team, there's some teams you'll see and they're kind of struggling. It's a little awkward. It's a little clunky. It's a little bad. And you're man, if they could just figure it out, this team could be good, right? Just give them some time. They'll figure it out and they'll be good, right? And then it doesn't happen. And you're okay, well, that sucked. But man, that could have been great, right? That's not the Minnesota Timberwolves. The Minnesota Timberwolves, I don't look at Minnesota and go, man, if this team could just figure it out, they would be great. I think even best case scenario, I don't think they're a contender, right? Unless Anthony Edwards turns into, the best player on the planet, I don't think that they're a contender. And even then, I still think it's so clunky, it might be difficult. But I don't, this is not a team, even it's looking back, it's man, I wonder what that team could have been if they'd figured it out. I don't even see that being the case. I think, 10 years from now, 5 years from now, we're going to look at this and go, man, they should have done the right thing. They should have not went and got Rudy Gobert. You should have stuck with Karl Anthony Towns, stuck with Anthony Edwards, went and got pieces that made sense, used all your assets, used your young guys, maybe even take D'Lo and go get, some quality guys that could come in and really help. Maybe you could have went and got a Jeremy Grant maybe. That would have been a perfect fit. Right, and you could have kept, still would have had Vanderbilt and some of those other guys, and or maybe gave up Vanderbilt in order to go get Jeremy Grant, and just make little minor deals that for guys that are young enough to really kind of elevate this team. Maybe went and got Bojan Bogdanovic to just kind of be a floor spacer and 3-point consistent guy. Just nothing major, just some small little changes, kind of keep the main idea intact and kind of figure it out from there. Or it just, but they did it. They decided, no, we want to go get Rudy Gobert and use him to basically neutralize Karl Anthony Towns and neutralize Anthony Edwards and clog the paint and have no perimeter defense, no nothing. It's not a surprise that they're 10th in the West right now. And I wouldn't be shocked if they don't make the playoffs. I really don't. I think that they probably make the play-in team, because like Utah's starting to come back to reality, right? I don't see them being that. Sacramento, they could make the playoffs or not. Lakers seem to be kind of surging again. I think that they might, get in, at least be a play-in team. Clippers, concerns about injuries, right? Can Paul George, Kawhi Leonard stay healthy? That's a big thing. Portland's dealing with some issues, some mess right now as well. There's several questions. So I do think the Timberwolves could maybe squeeze in like at best the 7 to 10 range, but the Suns, the Nuggets, the Pelicans, the Grizzlies, and probably the Warriors turning around at some point. There's 5 teams at the worst that are your lock-ins for the playoffs, right? Bearing major injury or anything like that. But you got those 5 teams are basically going to be a lock for the playoffs. And then that gives you like the Clippers, the Mavericks. We'll see how the Lakers continue to do. Maybe the Lakers. Those 3 teams are going to be fighting for the 6th seed. And then 7th through 10th are the play-in teams, right? And the Timberwolves are probably in that range. I don't think that they're going to be very good. It's crazy. It's surprising that they even did that to begin with. But anyway, as always, this is a discussion, so I want to hear from you. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments section below. What do you think? Do you think it's time to blow it up? Trade Karl Anthony Towns. Try to get some assets that make some more sense around Anthony Edwards and Rudy Gobert. Kind of maybe do like the Utah route, right? Where you got Rudy and you got Ant-Man is like, the Donovan Mitchell, Rudy 2.0, and you kind of try to build a team around that? Or do you just kind of leave it and hope that maybe they turn it around? However you feel, good, bad, ugly, somewhere in between, let me know. Love your thoughts and opinions down in the comment section below.